Cancel culture is a scourge on our society. People getting angry at perceived slights, forming a tiny group of a small handful of people, and then trying to destroy someone's career. Unfortunately, it often works against smaller individuals, less well-known people. In the instance of Louis C.K., it actually cost him a lot of money. As he says it, $35 million in a single day, when people found out that he was doing something inappropriate. Now, here's the thing. Louis C.K.'s story is a bit different. His story is more of a Me Too moment. But the news we have now, Louis C.K. is back. He's making no apologies, and he's as offensive as ever, if not more offensive. But in the actual, so I want to highlight this, Louis C.K. coming back talking about these issues, but I also want to highlight this. Shane Gillis, the guy who was actually canceled because they found bad jokes he made a while ago. They said he was racist, he was bigoted. He's back. And he did a stand-up as well, and he's refusing to apologize. I think this phenomenon is really interesting. And you can look at the woke outrage over Bill Burr and Dave Chappelle not understanding society changing. But the reality is, there's a few points I want to nail in this video. First, Louis C.K. is back. Let's talk about that. That's great. I think the guy's funny. We'll talk about his history. More importantly, though, comedy is extremely, extremely powerful. And comedians are having none of it. Now, Bill Maher, right? He's a political comedian. He's pushed back relentlessly. But now we're seeing Shane Gillis, recently canceled, fired from SNL, standing up and saying no way. Louis C.K. was recently canceled. He's back, though his story is more of a Me Too thing. And we can see the political ramifications of the Dave Chappelle special when Ben Carson uses Dave Chappelle's joke to make a point about a trans issue. Politics is downstream from culture, which means if comedians can make fun of it, we can kind of break these things down and kind of weaken these crazy people. There's something interesting I want to highlight too. In this story from The Week, What Cancel Culture and Its Critics Get Wrong by Damon Linker. Now, he's actually wrong in his core thesis, and we'll talk about it. But today, let's talk about cancel culture, its failure, and how I think comedians may actually be, they are pushing back on cancel culture, and this may be huge. Because we may be getting to a point now where people are willing to stand up and say, enough, especially the story with Louis C.K. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com/donate if you would like to support my work. There's a PayPal option, a crypto option, a physical address. But the best thing you can do, because we're going to be talking about offensive themes, is share this video. YouTube deranks independent political commentary. They prop up CNN, Fox News, MSNBC. So if you think I do a good job, you can help me overcome those obstacles by sharing this video wherever you want to share it. Let's read from Chicago Tribune. Anyone expecting an apology or remorse from comedian Louis C.K. regarding his widely reported misconduct, first reported in the New York Times in November 2017, will have to keep looking. He avoided apologizing in the statement he issued in the wake of the original story 2 years ago, and in his late set Thursday night at Zany's in Rosemont, that's basically Chicago area, the second of 6 shows over 3 days that were quietly announced and quickly sold out earlier this week, he seemed to be working to reframe himself as the victim. Listen, stop paying attention to the woke outrage. The worst that could happen is people yell at you for a little while. Now, I get it. Louis C.K. says he lost $35 million in a day, but he's still here. He's still alive. He's selling out shows. He is coming back, and he is refusing to apologize. Woke outrage is fake. It's about time people stood up to it. They say, at times during his show, he almost reveled in the shame, claiming everyone in the audience has a thing that they do that would be embarrassing if anyone found out. And how privileged we are that, unlike for him, no one knows what it is. His own culpability in the reports of him pleasuring himself in front of women went unmentioned. Instead, he put the focus squarely on how he has been affected by the fallout. He used to play arenas, he noted at one point with a cynical laugh, reminding the audience how lucky they were to see him in such an intimate space. But he doesn't want anyone quoting him on that. On top of the use of a yonder case to keep everyone's phones locked up throughout the course of the show, which is something a number of comics have been doing. Basically, the point he's making is he wouldn't allow anyone to take any notes. He says he wanted to test it, but let's skip ahead and get to the point. First, he says Louis C.K. talked about how he expect cripples to be happy with their situation, but notes that if he lost his legs, he'd never be happy. There's Louis C.K. engaging in ableism. He doesn't care. He's not apologizing. We can then see, this threw me for a loop right here. Check it out. Later, he spent a good amount of time breaking down the R word. Okay, I don't know what the R word is. Or I should say, when I first read this, I was like, what's the R word? Can you, just off the top of your head, do you know what the R word is? I don't. Oh, that's what it is. See, I can't say it. We're on YouTube. It is a word that is offensive to the mentally disabled. That R word. Think about where we are and why someone like Louis C.K. is doing well when he's not apologizing. Who wants to live in a world where we refer to everything by the first letter, the R word, the F word, the N word, the C word? Is that a joke? We know what the words are, and we know you're referencing them. But sure enough, yup, there have been professors who have been suspended or investigated for academically referencing the word. There was a Netflix executive who was telling people the N word was offensive. He got fired. I think it's an old story. But here we can see, finally, people are starting to push back. Now, Louis C.K., he took a hard fall. Again, it was a Me Too thing. But he's back. He won't apologize. And let's take a look at a quote from the Chicago Tribune. Quote, this is from someone who was there. We live in this world where everyone wants their feelings heard. The guy next to me told me adamantly before the show when I asked if he thought CK would address his misconduct. Quote, I hope he doesn't apologize. That guy and other audience members like him are certainly getting what they're looking for out of Louis C.K.'s current tour. I wonder if Louis is. Regular people are sick and tired of cancel culture. Regular people want to laugh. Regular people know that sometimes jokes are mean. But you know what? We're all adults. Get over it, grow up, or leave. Now it gets better. Shane Gillis recently got canceled. He also has refused to apologize, making extremely offensive jokes. Good for him. Good. You know, I'm normally somebody who's critical of overly offensive comedy. But my reaction is usually like, you missed the mark on that one. You probably shouldn't do it again, right? And I would prefer comedy to try and to be better, right? That's what they say. Here's the thing. I've always been very much in favor of real social justice, true equality, all that. Something that's basic that most people would agree in, the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But the people who claim to be fighting for social justice in today's day and age are authoritarians who want to beat you down and destroy your life. Well, Shane Gillis, on probably the happiest day of his life, was supposed to be hired. He was hired by Saturday Night Live. Somebody went through his history and found off-color jokes he had made in poor taste, and he lost his job. He made comments about Asians, and he used a homophobic slur. It was in the context of comedy meant to be shocking and offensive. Andrew Yang came out and said something about it. He said, the guy shouldn't be fired. We can talk. Well, Andrew Yang addressed this recently, saying cancel culture has become a source of fear for Americans. Well, that's right, man. Recently, I did an event in Philly, I've referenced several times, and the people who were under fire from the outrage mob were scared. Absolutely scared. But let me remind you, take a look at Shane Gillis. He's still here doing his thing. He's not, look, you can overcome the mob. Hollow threats. What's the worst that can happen? Now, I admit, in the instance of Louis C.K. and Shane Gillis, some bad stuff happened. But they're still here. They're still alive. They're still doing shows. Life moves on. The outrage mob wants to destroy everything you have. And you don't even know if what you did is offensive. And you don't even know if maybe something 10 years ago would get brought up. The important thing about this, the first thing, as I mentioned, it's hollow. Ignore it. The other thing is how powerful this is in politics. I mean, even Andrew Yang here is talking about cancel culture is scaring people. I assure you, this is helping Donald Trump. Don't take my word for it. In this piece from The Week, what cancel culture and its critics get wrong, Damon Linker notes that this is probably causing a backfire. Let me see if I can pull this up. Will it work? We have reason to doubt it, and even to suspect the moral browbeating is contributing to the very political backlash the activists are reacting against. To see this, it's instructive to turn to the political realm. Unlike authors or entertainers who are dependent on niche audiences and the support of powerful business interests that can be swayed by the fear of bad publicity, politicians respond to public opinion more broadly and directly. He then goes on to say, for one thing, Donald Trump is in the White House. Yes, moral browbeating has caused a massive backfire. Louis C.K. is still working. He is selling out shows, smaller shows. Shane Gillis was fired. He's still working. In fact, he's probably capitalizing on this. And of course, the left is outraged, saying Dave Chappelle and Bill Burr just don't understand it. No, Dave Chappelle was widely supported. Here's the funny thing about the Dave Chappelle Rotten Tomatoes thing. If you aren't familiar, basically Dave Chappelle did the special, it was very offensive. Critics are outraged. Harumph, I say. 37,000 votes, 99%. They say, but Tim, don't you know what a review bomb is? You mean to tell me that a forum where someone said, hey, we should give Dave Chappelle a good rating, was full of people who didn't like Dave Chappelle's stand-up and are pretending to like it? How does that make sense? You know what makes more sense? People liked it so much, they rallied their friends to go and give it a good rating. End of story. It's not bots, it's not fake. It's people actually saying, yes, 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 more of this, please. The interesting thing about the article from The Week is that he says the critics of cancel culture don't realize we're all in favor of cancel culture, pointing out that if someone came out overtly racist and said something violent, we would all support the canceling of that individual. Nobody is ignoring that. That's exactly the position. See, this individual, Damon Linker, it's a great point he makes about the backlash. I agree. But he truly doesn't understand where people like me are coming from. Of course we want to cancel people who violate social norms and say outrageous things. Look at Steve King, Republican, said something outrageous on Twitter. Nobody had a problem saying enough. However, the problem is the left targets individuals for things that are perceived slights and not even that bad and destroys their lives. And when the left does something like Justin Trudeau appearing several times in blackface, they do nothing. What he gets right in this article is that it's a partisan issue. When the left targets someone for partisan politics, the right and the moderates react and say, stop. But when it's something every side agrees with, they all say, okay, that person can go away. Of course, society changes. There are jokes from 100 years ago we don't say today because they're offensive. We get that. The problem is Justin Trudeau and Northam in Virginia can be caught, not even that. So Northam was a long time ago. I hate bringing up old things, right? Because I'm not trying to play this game. The point is, though, they will target someone for a video they made years ago. Kevin Hart for jokes made 10 years ago. They will target these people. Then when Justin Trudeau is outed for several times doing this, they say, he acknowledged his mistake. Good for him. Good for him. No punishment. It's not genuine. It is a bad faith attack. That's the problem with cancel culture. And they like to claim Bill Burr and Dave Chappelle don't understand society in 2019 and they don't want to try. Aw, that's not true. Bill Burr and Dave Chappelle greatly understand. Now, I'm going to say something controversial here. Dave Chappelle was way funnier than Bill Burr. I give Bill Burr a C+. That's the most controversial thing I'll say about the comedians. No, I'm sure Bill Burr would recognize, too, that Dave Chappelle hit this one out of the park. I think Bill Burr actually worked on the Chappelle show. Dave Chappelle did a really, really good job, and he made extremely offensive comedy. You see, what's happening, in my opinion, is the more they try to beat us over the heads with morality policing, the more people want to be defiant and say, you can't tell me what to do. Here's what I think. I think back to the creation of the United States. How, think about the people who choose to came to America. You live in this wealthy-ish city, right? In the heart of the British Empire. But some people said, I'm going to go off on a 3-month journey. I'll probably die, and then I'm going to live in the woods somewhere. To me, that's crazy. Why would someone do that? Well, they had something about them. They didn't want to be told what to do, and they said, I'd rather go 3,000 miles across the sea to a land I've never seen before because I don't want to be told what to do by you. That mentality is what gave birth to the United States. Not just that mentality, but it was a big player in it. Then think about what happens with the Revolutionary War. Once again, these people in America, our founding fathers and our ancestors said, enough. I'm not going to be told what to do. We, culturally and genetically, are the product of people who refuse to be told what to do. And we enshrined it in our Constitution, limiting the powers of the government. Now, there's still people trying to strengthen the government and take away a lot of our individual rights. This country was founded on a culture and a people who believed that the individual was paramount and the government shouldn't be allowed to tell you what to do, nor should, for the most part, the mob. That's why we have these rights, to protect us not just from government, to grant us the protection of our peers, but to also protect us from our peers. That's why we're a constitutional republic with democratic processes instead of a direct democracy. What do you think then happens 200 plus years later? I hate to say it, but I do fear a lot of that energy is being stripped away and beaten down. There are a lot of people who happily accept conformity and bending the knee to the authority. But perhaps what we're seeing with Dave Chappelle and Bill Burr is a refusal to back down. It's that energy that America has always had, that I don't care, you can't tell me what to do, and I would rather burn it down than bend the knee. I mean, that kind of exemplifies my attitude. I believe what I believe. I will stand up for what I believe in, and I will never surrender. And I think that's a lot of Americans feel that way too, that we would never give in to your authoritarianism. You want to put us up against... I've actually been threatened by the far left repeatedly, sending me messages saying things like, you're first against the wall. You think I care? I'm going to laugh at Dave Chappelle, Louis C.K., Shane Gillis, and Bill Burr, no matter how offensive they are. I'm going to watch Bill Maher criticize him for his elitism and laugh when he mocks the authoritarian lunatics, because they don't know what is best for us, and they don't have the right to determine what we can or can't laugh at. Sorry, you don't understand society in 2019. So let me highlight a few other stories. South Park co-creator reveals why critics bashed Dave Chappelle's comedy special that people loved. He says, I think of someone in prison writing. I'm not going to read through the whole thing because I can sum it up for you, and I kind of already ranted for a long time. But in this story from The Blaze, they're referencing an interview, I think it's actually from The Hollywood Reporter, where he basically said, who was it? Let's read a little bit. They say it's Matt Stone, I believe. I always mix their names up. Matt Stone. So why the great disconnect? According to South Park co-creator Matt Stone, critics bashed the special over industry pressure to condemn politically incorrect content. They may have laughed like hell at that, and then they went home and they know what they have to write to keep their job. So when I read TV reviews or cultural reviews, I think of someone in prison writing. I think about somebody writing a hostage note. This is not what they think. This is what they have to do to keep their job in a social media world, he explained, so I don't hold it against them. Well, then we see this. What happened to Dave Chappelle? The cruelty of sticks and stones is a sign of the times. Dave Chappelle is completely attuned to the mean spirit of 2019. That's what's throwing off his old fans. No, it isn't. I grew up. I was a teenager. I can't remember when the Chappelle show was, but I'm pretty sure I was a teenager, and we laughed relentlessly at the Chappelle show. I am a fan of Dave Chappelle, and I was then, and I am now. I was a punk rock skateboarder laughing at his jokes, and I still am today. You know why? As much as they don't want to accept it. You know, Paul Joseph Watson said something like conservatism is a new counterculture. I don't know if he came up with that. He's not wrong, but I want to give a technicality to that. It's not conservatism. It is the counterculture of today does embrace some aspects of what conservatives also embrace. Counterculture is just counterculture. And a lot of conservatives have embraced counterculture, pushing back on the outrage, saying, I don't care about your requirements and your outrage and your mobs. It's not going to sway me. Dave Chappelle, not a conservative. Counterculture, yes. We are a country of punk rockers, rebels. It's what we've always been, a country founded by rebels with motorcycle gangs, punk rock music, mohawks, and telling people, you can't tell me what to do. So let's go back in time to the moral browbeating of the 90s and the 2000s with the religious right that no longer holds a lot of, they just don't have that power anymore, the religious right, and there's a new right. It's called the new right, with a lot of disaffected liberals now rallying alongside many of these people saying, yeah, Dave Chappelle's funny. Don't tell me not to swear. Don't tell me what I can or can't say. We're at a weird transitional period. I was watching Family Guy the other day, and there's a musical number where Peter Griffin rants about the FCC, saying they want to make you can't say certain words. And that's exactly what YouTube is doing today. I thought about how funny it was that Seth MacFarlane, diehard Democrat, has this song ragging on censorship and how they force him to say things he doesn't want to say or don't let him say things he does. And I'm like, what does that sound like to you? It sounds like cancel culture. It sounds like woke outrage. The FCC, the great censor of Family Guy, they couldn't say things on TV. They got in trouble because they did a show about Peter trying to find a Jewish accountant. That's my understanding. So in the end, I guess the main point I want to say is we're a country of rebels. Screw off. We've always been, and hopefully to an extent, we always will be. respecting individual liberties and freedoms while also recognizing times do change. That was the liberal position back in the day, at least when I was growing up. It's the position I hold. I can laugh at an offensive joke. Everybody in my neighborhood told offensive jokes. The Latinos told offensive jokes, the black people, the Asians, the white people, and we all hung out together. As I stated before, we had one friend who would refer to everybody, including himself, by racial slurs, and we all thought it was funny. It took away the power of using the slur when we all viewed each other as equals. Comedy is great, and comedy is pushing back on the BS. But I'm gonna make one final point. I'm not condemning or condoning what Ben Carson is saying. But he went on Tucker Carlson and he cited Dave Chappelle when making a point about trans women coming into women's shelters. You don't have to, I'm not here to agree or disagree. And I know I'm going to get the left saying, how dare you not agree with us? It's strange. I mean, the right usually says, I'll accept that. It's fine. It's better you're not on the, but the point is, this is the power of comedy. It reaches politics. Politics is downstream from culture. So when the culture changes, when Dave Chappelle comes up and says, we're not playing your game, dude, I'm going to say what I want to say. Well, then Ben Carson says the same thing. That's the power of politics. So let this be a final lesson to the woke outrage. When you try to, when you try to attack people, when you try to shut them down, when you are pushing back with extremist policies, don't be surprised when regular people push back and emboldens those you don't like. Because even the weak, a left-wing outlet, plainly states it is backfiring. Plain and simple. It is contributing to the very political backlash the activists are reacting against. It's like a Chinese finger trap. The harder you pull, the worse it gets. Louis C.K. is back. Cancel culture, be gone. We'll see what happens, but I'm confident. So long as people like Louis C.K., who, again, I know it's a Me Too thing, not so much canceled, if he's willing to come back, refuse to apologize, and so is someone like Shane Gillis, cue the Tim's highlighting white males. I'm pretty sure Louis C.K. is Mexican, but anyway, I digress. If they're willing to stand up, if Chappelle, Rogan, if Bill Burr, if they're all willing to stand up and push back, I think it's really, really good news, because it means regular people will feel comfortable laughing at the insanity and the authoritarianism and saying, we don't care. But the last thing I'll say as I wrap this up, if you're someone who was targeted by woke outrage, who cares? Don't overreact. Don't apologize. Ignore them. They have caused so much problems, they have caused such a great problem to actual progress, that if we actually want to bring about change, we actually want to make changes, they've completely ruined any opportunity to do so. Like I mentioned, there are jokes from 100 years ago that they're offensive. We don't do anymore. Well, at this point, everyone's so fed up with their outrage and cancel culture, no one cares anymore. No one's going to listen. It's going to make it harder. But at least for now, we can tell these people to be gone. Stick around. Next segment will be coming up at youtube.com/TimCastNews at 6 p.m. And I will see you all there. It is a different channel.